Yeah, well, it's been a slow process throughout my life. I guess people ask me this a lot, and I try to give a different answer every time. So here we go. Um, as I was a teenager, I think when I came across things like Bill Hicks and magic mushrooms, I started to veer towards the counterculture and start thinking more critically. I came across people like David Icke and Alex Jones, and started thinking about conspiracies, Michael Tsarian, and some of these other people, reading their work, watching their documentaries. I ended up writing my own book, my first book, Atlantean Conspiracy, which was like an encyclopedia of all that I was learning from these other conspiracy gurus out there. And my research has continued to now, where I've learned something that most conspiracy gurus won't touch with a 10-foot pole. And so I'm doing my best to break through the counter culture, the alternative media, whatever you want to call it here, to try and expose the flat earth conspiracy, the title of my latest book, which is what hopefully we'll get into soon here. Hmm. Well, my mom's been doing yoga most of my life, and I've been doing martial arts since I was a teenager. So yoga helps with martial arts. In Shaolin, they teach Qigong, which is like yoga, stretching, breathing, different practices before you even do any sort of fighting or martial application. So it all kind of flows into one, what I've been interested in since childhood. And so now I teach Wing Chun. I've also done Taekwondo and taught that, and I teach yoga as well. My spiritual view is somewhat molded through yoga and Eastern philosophies. Hinduism, Buddhism here in Thailand, where I live, are prevalent. So I guess, yeah, some of my spiritual and philosophical worldviews are shaped from these kind of things. My third book, Spiritual Science, also was all about this kind of stuff. I think one of the big things that's being hidden is that everything is consciousness based. The universe, all material reality, is actually based in consciousness, whereas most of modern science tries to say the opposite, that everything is matter based, material based, and through some sort of material evolution without any sort of consciousness or intelligence behind it, consciousness, life, and intelligence all just randomly, haphazardly came out of matter. And so this is part of the scientific conspiracy going on. Nowadays, science is expressed with a capital S, where you've got the authorities, the priests of science that tell you exactly what it is, whereas really all science is a method. It's the scientific method for using experiments, repeated observation, to come to better and better, closer and closer conclusions. The process, the method, seems to have been forgotten, and now the capital S science is being upheld by people like Neil deGrasse Tyson or Albert Einstein or other famous figures of the past, who, and their authority is what is reigning as science, whereas the scientific method, which, you know, there's 200 proofs the Earth is not a spinning ball that I've put into my most recent book, and they're all scientific experiments that you can do by yourself. And this is science. Yet, when you talk to Neil deGrasse Tyson about the flat Earth, he says, "Do you even science, bro?" And they use these kind of scientism memes to indoctrinate their followers into saying like, we already know what's real, and anyone who says anything alternate is crazy. And that's why terms like flat earther have been totally ridiculed and ostracized for so long now, because they don't want you to critically think about these things. They want you to just accept the fact that science has figured it out. Just listen to Neil deGrasse Tyson and you know everything about the cosmos. But like we were saying, I think what's being suppressed is that we live in a consciousness-based universe, and instead of there being an inexplicable Big Bang where everything, for no reason, space, time, and matter just explode into existence, and then over time and chance evolve into planets and spinning suns and moons, and then life somehow manifests and reproduces and evolves from single-celled organisms up to multi-celled, up to fish, and fish crawl onto the land, and within a generation somehow turn their gills into lungs and, you know, go from reptiles into mammals and start flying, and then turn from monkeys into humans. They've got this whole timeline and not a single piece of evidence to back it up that this kind of materialist evolution has ever happened. There is, of course, adaptations between species, and that's what they point to all the time. It's microevolution. But macroevolution, the actual changing of a species into another species, is completely impossible philosophically and physically, and it's never been shown. And so this is another aspect of the capital S science that they're trying to shove down your throats and teaching as fact in school. It's not a theory of evolution, it's evolution. And it's just taught as is. But again, these are theories that haven't been proven at all. And when you look at the opposite, you look at what I think is obvious, and that is that we live in an intelligently designed consciousness-based system, that it's impossible that all that is could have randomly come into existence for no reason out of material happenings. Look at the sunset and flowers and feel your emotions and everything. You think that's random? How could that possibly be random? You think you're smart. How could your intelligence come into existence if there wasn't something more intelligent to create you? Everything we've tried to imitate in nature, like a recording device to try and capture reality, we can't capture reality better than the human eyeball can. We can't capture sound better than the human ear can. So there's something infinitely more intelligent than us that clearly created us and is behind everything. And that is like infinite consciousness or God or Tao, Brahma. There's different titles people ascribe to it, but it's like it's the originating thing, which is some sort of intelligent consciousness, which created the material world and dissolved its objective, omnipresent, omniscient, the other omni, into subjective packets of consciousness in this dream world that it created for itself to experience itself subjectively, like Bill Hicks said. Well, as far as war is concerned, the number one most profitable industry in the world is weapons sales. So there is a military-industrial complex. There is a war machine out there making money off of destruction and our suffering. So there is like a small, very small percentage of people that drive this kind of thing, and their consciousness certainly is needs some changing, needs some evolving. But um, most people, don't want war. The common people don't want war. Politicians have to create wars by lying to two sides of the population to get them to hate each other and think that they need to buy these weapons to create the war and then to destroy both countries. And then, of course, the bankers give money to both sides so that they can both build up their armaments and destroy each other. And then once they're destroyed, they have to build up once again. And then they can just keep playing nations off of each other like this. So it's a big business. War is the biggest business. And what can we do? Well, expose it, see it for what it is. Social media is doing great. I saw this article about how Facebook was concerned that its users are using social media now to spread truth messages, to spread activism and articles of this nature instead of just personal information and selfies and the kind of thing that Facebook wishes you would stick to. So I think this is definitely helping. There's a lot of different ways off the internet as well that we can truth bomb people into seeing these issues. The mainstream is all about diversion. The mainstream media, if left to your own devices, if you shut off the television and you just question the world around you and remain critical, you figure these things out. So they're in the business of distraction and keeping you, like this all the time so that you're not figuring these things out, not looking up to the sky or seeing the sun and moon revolving around you, or feeling the fact that you're motionless on a non-spinning Earth, seeing the flat horizon that doesn't curve at all. They tell you it does. Little things like this. You watch television all day and you just see these logos and NASA images of spinning balls and the Boston bombings and all these other hoaxes out there, and you start to believe them, and then anyone that comes along and denies them is put in a pigeonhole. I'm a flat earther, I'm a Holocaust denier, and they're able to run the narrative this way so that anyone that goes against the mainstream is put into their little box that they can pigeonhole and put aside and make sure that you don't have any effect of their narrative. So between distraction and diversion, they're doing their job. And so if we're going to stop it, then we have to become the media. We have to use YouTube and use social media and use graffiti and use whatever you can think of, use your creativity to get these messages out there beyond the diversion, distraction machine of the mainstream. Yeah, if you look into things like evolution and the history of Darwinism and dinosaurs, you find that it's a lot more rocky than your school textbooks have led you to believe. Things like the Lucy skeleton or the Piltdown Man, and many other such supposed human-ape hybrids that have been found have now been completely exposed as hoaxes, even though like they just made a movie about Lucy as though it's still some legitimate scientific phenomena. They just mix some ape bones with human bones and then claim that they've found a new human ancestor. And they've been doing it for about 150 years regularly to try and dupe the public. And they've got them all over museums. They've been doing the same thing with dinosaurs, which were never known to have existed or have a bone of any sort found before the Masonic heyday of evolutionism in the mid-1800s. You look into these things, first of all, there's just so many things that have been exposed as a hoax. You gotta wonder if this is actually legitimate. Why aren't we tripping over these bones all the time, and why are so many of them being hoaxed? And then, like I said, you look at macro and microevolution. Macros never occurred. You philosophically think of these things like, why would the universe exist that way? How could gravity, this magical magnetism, cause a big bang and then cause planets to spin around each other and form into perfect circles and then spin perfect circles around one another and all this? And it happens inexplicably for no reason. And then somehow life just comes out of inert gases and dirt and whatever else was big banged out of the Big Bang. These things philosophically, they just fall to pieces, along with when you look at the actual history of these hoaxes that they've been using to try and prop up this philosophically impossible model. It falls to pieces. In my Flat Earth Conspiracy book, I've got chapters on both of these issues. I recommend people checking them out. I'll be making videos about them soon as well. You can see that on my YouTube channel. And you'll see that these things just don't hold up to scrutiny. There's been too many hoaxes exposed, and when you think of it philosophically, there's just no way that intelligence and life and consciousness can evolve randomly, spontaneously out of inert, dead, unintelligent matter. Right? Everything sounds wrong with the picture. Yeah, well, when governments start to mandatorily enforce compulsory education, it's time to get suspicious about what their motives are. And when that first was introduced around the world, compulsory schooling was only like from age 10 to 12 for a few weeks a year, and it was just reading, writing, arithmetic, this kind of thing. So they put their foot in the door, and then over the past 150 plus years, they've been expanding it out to the 9 to 5, whatever, 9 to 3, or whatever the school days are, Monday to Friday, from 4 years, 5 years old, up to 18, and then college, up to 8 years beyond that. And what are they teaching you? Algebra, calculus, all these things that you'll never use again in life. And what they're doing is they're putting a bunch of 5-year-olds in a room with 5-year-olds at desks all facing forward to the big boss at the blackboard that gives orders, and everyone else has to compete against one another for the highest grade to try and satisfy the big boss at the blackboard. And then you put 6-year-olds in a room of 6-year-olds and you do it once again. And this is a great way to stunt their growth by not mixing them with other age groups, first of all, as well as fixing them on fantasy objectives like the big boss at the blackboard and getting them acquainted with a slave-like, prison-like lifestyle where they can't eat until there's a bell rung, They can't use the bathroom without asking for permission. They have to quickly study and memorize bell rings, go to another class, and compartmentalize their brain in such a way that they can regurgitate all this stuff and then usually forget it, most of it, shortly afterwards because of the way that this is being done. And so you're just creating a bunch of kids that are good at being bored and forgetting things and looking for personal pleasures outside of school. You can't wait for that bell to ring. And what it does is it gets you ready for the 9 to 5, Monday to Friday work life of being someone else's employee, of working for one of these big corporations, one of these big companies that the government or the government itself, just like they would like you to work for. And think that having such a 9 to 5, Monday to Friday job is a great boon and that it's good for you. And that you won't be so bored because you've been so acclimated to it when you were growing up. I envision the possibility of a type of school where you don't graduate until you have a business of your own that you've created in which you're doing exactly whatever your passion is, what you want to do. Because everybody has that thing that they would love to do with their life if money wasn't an issue. And the real secret is that they don't tell you in school is that if you just do it and you find a sellable product or service related to your passion, over time, you will eventually make money, you will eventually become successful, and it can and will be the only thing you have to do for a job is exactly what you wanted to do, and you don't have to work for another master. You don't have to, you know, fulfill those fantasy objectives of the boss at the blackboard. And that's all those diplomas and certificates really are, is something to give to an employer to say, please be my master, please employ me. Yet all of us should be unemployable if we were already doing the work that we want to do because we'd already be self-employed and making money, not having to go and use this piece of paper, which this is an expensive piece of paper as far as money and time is concerned, just to be an employee, a wage slave of someone else. I mean, yeah, I have a definite problem with government schooling and the idea that we have to go to university to be employable, these kind of things. Right? Yeah, people think that meat is necessary for protein or that milk is necessary for calcium or that there's some sort of mystical ingredient in animal products that the human body must need in some way so that living a vegetarian or vegan lifestyle is unsustainable or unhealthy or unnecessary or on something in some way that they can maintain their unethical and unhealthy eating habits. It does turn out that eating meat and all animal products, in fact, is detrimental to your health and causes chronic and degenerative illnesses. Dr. Michael Brieger has done extensive meta-studies on this, showing that, in fact, the top leading 15 causes of human death, 14 of them, other than accidents, are all caused by animal products. And if you stop eating them and eat like a raw vegan diet is one of the best ways to go, you can actually reverse almost all of these illnesses. So that's a testament to show how healthy it is. And of course, ethically, not killing animals to eat their bodies and not stealing calves away from their mothers to drink their milk and stealing eggs. And the industries are pretty bad then. Most of what you get your milk and your cheese and your eggs from are coming from these factory farms. And so you gotta look at what you're supporting. Cowspiracy is a good movie that gets into that, as well as Earthlings. As far as the health aspects, Forks Over Knives is a recommended movie to show you that there is actually a lot of science with a lowercase s because it is debated, but you have to look into both sides of these things to see the truth. And there is science showing that vegetarianism is very good for you and meat eating is detrimental to the human body. So ethically and health-wise, vegetarian veganism is absolutely the way to go. But with the meat and dairy lobbies and the kind of capital S science being pushed by these funded studies and whatnot, you've got people trying to tell you that milk is good for your bone because they have that does a body good or whatever. People think that the calcium in it is good for your bones, but like they don't teach you that things like yellow peppers have calcium, and sesame seeds have even more than that. Things like this that don't come from animals. So we've been miseducated to a bunch of these things, thinking that protein only exists in animal products. There's protein in everything, and there's more protein in leafy green vegetables, you name it, than there is in any sort of meat. So it's all myths. It's just like the spinning ball Earth, just like the Holocaust, just like the Boston bombing and 9/11, and the Gulf of Tonkin and Pearl Harbor, and you name it. They just come up with all these little hoaxes to get us to believe their narrative, to go along with whatever their next step is. David Icke calls it the problem, reaction, solution, where when you want to control a population, it's easy three-step process developed by Hegel, a philosopher a couple hundred years ago, that said that you just have to give the thesis and the antithesis, and the synthesis will be exactly what you want. So you control this side, you control the opposition, and then nothing falls without your parameters. And through divide and conquer, you're able to hold the narrative within your parameters, like we were saying, and anything that falls out of it is a flat earth or Holocaust denier, a ridiculed position that they don't even allow to be spoken. Literally, a lot of my videos have been blocked in these European countries, which don't allow you to talk about the Holocaust in any light other than that the official light that it happened and 6 million Jews were murdered and whatnot. So that I've been censored because of that, because it's the only topic in history that is now a thought crime. In 18 countries, you can't even talk about this, which should be a red flag. So anyway, yeah, I've veered off topic from vegetarianism into the Holocaust, but that they do all run together. Hitler was a vegetarian, and kosher slaughter is one of the most gruesome ways to slaughter animals possible. Well, what everyone sees and experiences for themselves is that the horizon is completely flat and 360 degrees around you, no matter whether you're at sea level or you rise up as high as you can in a balloon. The horizon rises up to your eye level and remains flat all the way around. As far as we can experience, the Earth is motionless. We don't experience any sort of spin or revolution or spiral as we are told by authorities. We look up to the sky and we see that the sun, moon, and stars are all revolving around us. We say words like up and down and assume that they actually have meaning and that there is an up and a down objectively in nature. But then we're told something totally different from what we see and experience. We're told that the horizon does curve at a certain height that we can't get to, but these authorities can get to. And then they'll show pictures of the horizon curving. But if you look with your third eye open, you'll see that these pictures are clearly CGI, computer-generated images, which have gotten better over time. And they're not actually they can't get any higher than we can get in our amateur balloons. When you ask them about what is the Earth doing in space, they tell you it's spinning on its vertical axis at over 1,000 miles per hour, revolving around the sun at 67,000 miles per hour, while the sun revolves around the galaxy at 500,000 miles per hour. And the galaxy is still shooting off from that Big Bang they talked about, 14.7, they know exactly how long, 14.7 billion years ago. And it's going 670 million miles per hour. They know these exact speeds. Actually, I'm rounding up. Their exact speeds are 666 million, and the around the sun is 66,600. So they like to slip in their 666s where they can in this anti-God materialist evolution paradigm. And then they tell us that we're revolving around the sun, but the moon is revolving around us, and the stars are actually suns, bigger than our own sun, even though they appear smaller to us, but they're really, really far away, and that they have planets, maybe Earth-like planets around them, maybe with intelligent life. And they've woven this whole narrative of physical extraterrestrial life and other spherical planetoids out there based on what they say they can see with their special telescopes. And they give you more CGI images from things like the Hubble telescope. But if you take your own telescope and you look at the stars, they just look like translucent, almost holographic, changing colored lights. Some of them look like an orb, kind of disc-shaped. They're a little bit different. But what they don't look like is spherical terra firma planets that you could land on, like Earth here, and you could walk around on them. They don't look like that at all. They look like disco lights or an orb, just an immaterial little light in the sky. So again, when you listen to your priests at NASA, and they'll tell you that that's some sort of effect of the atmosphere that's causing them to look that way. You're only getting the light that was sent from them millions of years ago or something, and that's supposed to satisfy you. But like I said, you can zoom in. I have my P900. You can zoom in on any star, and it's right there. Like they tell you that the closest star is 25 trillion miles away, yet an 83 times zoom camera can zoom in on very close detail of these things. So the idea that they're actually that far away is ludicrous, and they only say they're that far away anyway as a refutation they created 400 years ago, when back then, for thousands of years, everyone knew the Earth was flat. People started saying it was a ball spinning around the sun. And they said, well, if that's the case, then the relative positions of the stars would have to change every night, or at least say in 6 months, you definitely see some change as we're on the other side of the sun, supposedly 200 million miles away from where we started. And you don't see an inch of parallax on your own telescope. They'll say that there's stellar parallax that they observe on their special telescopes that you can't have access to, of course. But none of us with our own instruments here on Earth can detect any of that because it's not happening. And if the Earth actually was spinning and revolving and spiraling and shooting in these 4 different hurtling motions that they say are happening, it would be impossible for the night sky to look the same even 2 nights in a row, let alone for thousands of years as it has been here, with the exact same constellations staying in their fixed positions relative to each other, circling around Polaris, the North Pole star, which is directly above the North Pole, which is the center of the flat Earth. And all the stars in a dome-like fashion rotate around us, the sun and moon as well, just like that, just like the shirt I'm wearing here. The sun and the moon are revolving over the flat Earth. And this map you can find is the UN flag, the UN symbol, and many of the UN's counterpart programs all use this map because they know this is the actual map of the Earth, but then they give us fake projections and globes on our teachers' desks since we're 5 years old, and tell us theories like gravity to explain why somebody on a spinning, hurtling ball wouldn't fall off the bottom along with all the water and buildings and atmosphere. And they say there's a magical force that Newton discovered by having an apple dropped on his head, and he realized that it's possible to stand upside down on a spinning ball Earth and be totally magnetized to the surface. All the while, little bugs, birds, and smoke can trail off and defeat gravity easily by flapping its wings. It's just nature pulling up. So all gravity is density. Heavy, dense things fall down, and light, non-dense things rise up. And depending on the relative density will be the speed at which they fall. And that's it. They just turned that fact of flat physics into gravity to explain how you could possibly stay stuck on the underside of a spinning ball. It makes absolutely no sense. I never really believed it as a child. It was one of the things I remember when I was first told about the ball Earth that we live on. I raised my hand and asked, how do you stay stuck to it? I think almost everybody has that question because it's common sense. It's ludicrous to think that people in Australia are standing upside down and that the rain falls upwards and that the plants grow opposite ways, and that you could dig a hole to China and all of these kind of things we've been taught. It's actually ridiculous. You have to think about an absurdity until it somehow makes sense to you that it would be possible for people to be standing at all angles on the outside of a sphere that's spinning and not fall off and not lose its trajectory and still be able to fly planes and land planes and all these things all on this 1,000-mile-per-hour spinning ball. we've been totally indoctrinated into this idea, and like I said, it's on television, NASA press releases every day. Ever since you're 5 years old, your parents saw the moon landings on television. They believe it. Everyone in society believes it. You've heard that flat earthers are retarded, so you're going to go along with that. So to get over this kind of indoctrination is going to be a little bit, if this is the first time you're hearing about it, look into this subject. Check out my books, my channel, Eric Dubay. Just type in flat earth for yourself. There's a lot of misinformation, which you're going to have to sift through, as you can imagine. If what I'm telling you is true, and there's a 500-year-long conspiracy that's been covering up the flat, motionless earth that cultures throughout history for thousands of years before that were known to know, then it's going to take some time to get through this brainwashing, this indoctrination. And of course, there's going to be disinformation, misinformation out there to lead you astray, such as the Flat Earth Society that most people have heard of, which is actually more of a satirical organization that mixes some truth in with a bunch of lies and misdirection and satire to make the whole subject seem like it's ridiculous. Whereas there are also legitimate flat earth researchers who stick to the proofs, stick to the science, the experiments, and those are the people you're going to want to look for. Yeah, that's a decent introduction, I guess, is that everybody left to their own devices sees and feels a flat, motionless earth with everything in the heavens revolving around us, and people can find on their own time plenty of proofs and experiments showing that this is exactly the case. The natural physics of water are to remain level, to find their flat. If you dam up water and let it go, it finds its flat surface and then it's stationary. But if we were on a ball, that would never be possible. Rivers would be flowing uphill. Water should be flying off the ball. All these things don't make any sense unless you believe this thing they call gravity, which they've never shown to exist ever, which, as I said, is this mythical pulling force that Newton had to come up with to explain how things could be on a spinning ball Earth without falling off. And so he says that, well, masses, by virtue of their large mass alone, create this influence that causes other smaller masses to stick to or orbit around them. And he says they do one or either or both, depending on whatever his convenience is, so that we stick to the Earth, but the moon revolves around the Earth, and the moon never is pulled in to crash into the Earth, and we can never jump up and start revolving around the Earth. So gravity just, like I said, then gravity's able to hold the buildings, but it can't hold little bugs and birds. So gravity has all these little holes in it, like Swiss cheese, that allow the scientists with a capital S, the atheist, materialist scientists that are trying to sell this anti-God, anti-spiritual, pro-material, evolution-based spinning ball paradigm that throws out God. That was so long a sentence, I forgot where I started, but that's what they're doing, and yeah. When you're trying to control someone, it's best not to tell them exactly what you're trying to do. And in fact, it's best to lie to them as much as possible and to keep them in the dark as much as possible about as fundamental things as you could possibly lie to them about, so that you can gain further control over them. So the most fundamental thing you could possibly lie to someone about is the earth under their feet and why they're actually here, how the earth came about, how life and consciousness evolved and everything. So as we're saying, this whole agenda, which you could say starts with the ball Earth, then goes into evolution and Big Bang and this entire material paradigm, what it does is totally removes God or any sort of intelligent design or consciousness-based reality and replaces it with a material-based, random, haphazard reality where everything is just, whatever. It's morally anything goes. That's the kind of, Satanism, that do as thou wilt. A lot of these people in control have this kind of mentality where they don't want to believe that there's a higher power out there that might judge them or that has a greater plan for them, because then they actually have to consider it and maybe be better people and do what's right for themselves and for everyone else. And instead they can just be selfish and go about their lives in a hedonistic kind of way. So I think that's what they want. You want your slaves nice and selfish. You want to keep them occupied on themselves and wanting more and more all the time. So we've been driven towards that kind of consumerism lifestyle. And the reason for the science aspect, the New World Order everybody's heard about, they want a world government, they want a world economic system, they want a world military, and they want a world religion. And what else is this spinning ball earth evolution big bang paradigm but a new religion? It's a new answer. It's a new cosmology, a new answer for the biggest questions of how, why, where, when. They give you all these answers, totally unproven, just as unproven and unprovable as any other religion or god that these people would turn their noses up at and make fun of for everyone else who believes in them, without realizing that they themselves are completely under a belief system themselves of these science authorities have told them about, and they think that it's absolute truth. So a lot of these atheist, scientific, materialist types who scoff at any sort of religious or spiritual types are actually under more of the kind of indoctrination that they're scoffing at than the people they're scoffing at. They don't even realize it. And this is exactly what they want. They want a totally indoctrinated populace who doesn't even realize that the whole world is in a one world religion. It's already happened. We already have one. Other than the people who have now figured out the flat earth and are starting to understand the myth of evolutionism and the Big Bang and all these things, everybody believes it. Everybody already is in this world religion. Everybody assumes that they've been taught the truth about this spinning ball earth and gravity and evolution and everything. So they've already completed this, just like they've already completed the world government pretty much. The UN is pretty much a world power with most of the powerful countries in it. The banking system is almost worldwide now, with only like 3 countries left that don't have a Jewish-owned Rothschild central bank printing their money at interest. And anybody that does, of course, they go in and take them out, just like Gaddafi or Hitler back in the day. And so now, North Korea, Iran, Cuba are the only places left that aren't part of this international banking system. Back in 2000, there was Iraq, Afghanistan, Syria, and Libya, I believe, which have all now been knocked off the list as we've entered in them through false flag excuses to get our military in there, and then propped up regimes to get the banking system and the other corporate influences into those countries. And that's why countries like North Korea are so militantly against the West and against Jews entering their borders and against anyone taking anything out from them other than what they want, because the Western propaganda machine is so good at making any little thing into some, they're always trying to make North Korea and Iran and these other places into the enemy however they can. They're always looking for any small thing they can do to exploit or even completely fabricate to make people hate these places. And I'm not saying that North Korea or any of these places are doing totally right by their population, but what I'm saying is that they're in a situation now where there's only a couple strongholds left against this worldwide New World Order banking government system that's coming into place. And to protect your people from it, you have to take a strong-handed and militant and what's the word? You gotta stay away. You gotta keep the people away, and that's why they've got their borders shut off. That's why they're not allowing Western media in to brainwash their population. These kind of things. I don't know if they've figured out the flat Earth or some of these other things, but point being that overall this system is being brought into place so that everyone is educated into the same religious scientific belief that the Earth is a spinning ball that revolves around the sun, and the authorities at NASA and the other space agencies are out there in space. They've gone to the moon. There's other planets, and this is just looking back at the deception over the 500 years. If we look forward a little bit, what they're planning now is this whole alien thing. They keep telling us they're going to Mars. They found water on Mars. There might be life on Mars. They found these other habitable planets that have water and are Earth-like far away. And they've been ramping up this propaganda now for almost a century that aliens exist, even though they're to this day literally is no physical evidence of any sort of extraterrestrial alien actually existing. Interdimensional beings, something like this, sure, things that aren't physically tangible that leave behind evidence of their being here. UFOs, sure. Aircraft, military classified aircraft flying around, yeah, those exist as well. But to connect those to extraterrestrials living elsewhere, this is what they want you to do now. And with things like Project Bluebeam, which have been declassified, they now have the ability, as you may have seen with the floating cities in China or some other displays of like Godzilla in Japan, they can make holographic displays in the sky so convincing that it looks like there's a whole floating city in the clouds, or that Godzilla is attacking Japan. And with a type of sonar technology, they're able to beam sounds, but they're not sounds, they're like thoughts directly into your head, so that it's not going into your ears so much as someone standing over there wouldn't hear it. Someone over here does hear it inside their heads. And they've talked about, just like many presidents and other important figureheads throughout history have talked about, if an alien presence happened, like an Independence Day, they came in, whether they were friends, like in the V series, or enemies, like in Independence Day, they would be a cause for the entire world to unite, just like they want the New World Order. And so this, and of course, this complete myth that they've created that they can totally control. Uh, and they can do it now with current day technology that we've seen. They don't show it too much, but we have seen examples that are out there that they could do, just like in that series V, where UFO spaceships come over major cities. You could do this with military aircraft, or you could do it with the hologram displays, and then you can beam voices directly into somebody's head saying, we come in peace, or whatever, like from that series. So they now actually have well, just like Star Trek. Back when I was a kid, I remember thinking those video phones were the coolest thing ever. And wouldn't that be cool if that wasn't science fiction? And what am I doing right now? I'm on a video phone with you talking about these things, and it's reality. It is not science fiction. And of course, you look deeper into it from there. The people creating this science fiction are the same ones that gave you the cell phones, and they probably had them and knew about them beforehand anyway. So it was more than just a creative idea, but something that they were predictively programming or bringing into the mass consciousness. But anyway, the technology is evolving, but it hasn't evolved to the point that they say where we have a space station outside of Earth, and that we've landed men on the moon, and that we may be going to Mars, and that we have Hubble telescopes and others out there millions of miles away, they say, which send them pictures through an internet that they say they have, where they can receive it from 1,000,000+ miles away, even though my Wi-Fi signal cuts off, after 10 feet or something. They're able to have this kind of power, but they keep the patents to themselves, of course. You can't find this patent for the million-mile internet, or find any more information about many of the things NASA claims to have done. But if you look into them, you'll see that it's a big puppet show, and they're holding the marionette strings all the way from NASA up to the UN, trying to bring in this new world order, world government control. And that's why the big lie, because the bigger the lie, the more people will accept it, and the more you can control them. If somebody's born in a box and they don't know anything that's outside of the box except for what you tell them, you have complete control over them. And that's what they're doing. Everyone's in a box where they think that they're on the outside of the convex curvature of a spinning ball that's held in by gravity, and all these myths that they weave for you since childhood. You're in a box. And yeah, you have to think outside the box just to believe your own eyes and to believe what I'm saying, that, you've been sold a bill of goods and this is a bunch of bullshit. Yeah. Well, it's definitely better knowing the truth, and I understand that certainly it can become heavy and it seems negative to research some of these kind of things. I think that's why a lot of people stay clear of them, and they'll use a kind of new age mentality where they say that I don't want to focus on the negative because I'm just making it happen by focusing on it. Well, there may be some truth to that kind of thinking, where people who obsessively focus on something manifest it more than it needs to be. But you can also take it too far the other way, where acting like just living in complete denial and pretending that negative things don't happen is somehow the way that they're going to stop. No, it doesn't happen that way. Negative things, and especially negative people, don't just stop being the way that they are when people ignore or deny their negativity. It actually has to be confronted, and only then can positive change happen. So I think a lot of people who are falling into that mindset would do well to think again about what positivity really is, and how much of how much of a positive change can you make if you're just hanging out with other positive people doing positive things, and making your own little posy bubble, while you're leaving all the negative people and events over here by themselves, when you could be using your skill, your positivity, to help bring them up into this positive realm that you're ascribing to and hoping to stay in. And wouldn't that actually be a much better use of your positivity and your time as far as helping the world and making a change, is by finding those people and those places, those situations which are the most negative or in the most dire circumstances, or the worst people, the worst whatever, the worst wars, Palestine, the banking, these things, the health. There's so many topics that you get into. The stuff is bad, and how can you make it better? Well, certainly not by ignoring it. You got to delve into it, and then bring your positive change, bring your positive solutions. Boycott, if boycott the negative companies, and then buy from the positive, smaller ethical companies. These kind of things that you can do in your daily life. Everybody's life, when you die, you will either have made a net positive gain to the world or a net negative gain, and you have a chance to up that ante every moment of every day with every action that you take. So just strive to do the most positive actions you can, and do them in those areas which are now predominantly negative, because that's where you'll have the greatest effect. If I just did yoga all the time, and I taught you yoga, and that was all I did with my life, and I never wrote my books, I never exposed the flat earth conspiracy, and did all these other things that I'm trying to do to explain these truths I've discovered to people, would that be positive? Most new age people would say that that's a positive lifestyle. That's how I should live. That's how I'm going to change the world. Just keep teaching yoga, Eric. But I beg to disagree. I think that taking on the negative forces and taking on the negative subjects and exposing the positivity and the light on them is much more beneficial, and I'm making a much greater change by doing that. And I think everyone could stand to do that, especially the new age positive in denial type folks. Yep. Eric Dubay on YouTube, Dubay. My website is atlanteanconspiracy.com, and the International Flat Earth Research Society is a forum where you can find out pretty much anything you'd want to know about the flat Earth at IFERS, IFERS .ace.st. That's where I'd recommend people go, and you can get books, interviews, articles, audio, video, foreign language translations, frequently asked questions, everything you could want to know, not only about the flat Earth, but other conspiracy type topics as well.